still can't shake the look of absolute confusion and heartbreak on my 7-year-old daughter Lily's face when my fiancé's mother reached across the dining table, snatched a plate of food right out of her small hands, and told her, "Put that back, sweetheart. This dinner is only for our real family's kids." The entire dining room went dead silent, 20 pairs of eyes staring at us while my future mother-in-law, Alina, stood there looking completely self-righteous, as if she hadn't just crushed a little girl's spirit in front of everyone she was supposed to trust. I felt a wave of white-hot rage wash over me that I have never experienced in my entire life, and in that exact moment, I knew that the beautiful, elaborate wedding we had spent the last year planning was officially dead in the water. Was I wrong for completely blowing up the entire family dynamic and walking out on my wedding over what Alina claimed was just a misunderstanding? Or would you have done the exact same thing to protect your child? To really understand how we got to this point, I have to take you back to the beginning of my relationship with Mark. When I met Mark 3 years ago, I thought I had finally found the missing piece to our puzzle. I am a single mom, and my daughter Lily is my absolute world. Her biological father walked out before she was even born, so it has always been just the two of us against the universe. Mark entered our lives like a breath of fresh air, showing incredible patience, kindness, and love not just toward me, but more importantly, toward Lily. He never tried to force himself into a father role too quickly, but instead earned her trust slowly, coloring with her, watching her favorite cartoons, and genuinely listening to her little stories. Within a year, Lily adored him, and I was deeply in love with a man who seemed to value my daughter just as much as I did. When Mark proposed to me last summer with a beautiful ring and a promise to always protect and cherish both of us, I felt like the luckiest woman alive. However, while my relationship with Mark was a dream, his family was an entirely different story, and the cracks began to show almost immediately after the engagement. Mark's mother, Alina, is the undisputed matriarch of their family, a woman who rules with passive-aggressive comments, rigid traditions, and a deeply ingrained sense of snobbery. From our very first meeting, Alina made it clear that I wasn't exactly what she had envisioned for her golden child son. She would drop subtle, toxic hints about my background, making remarks about how brave I was for raising a child on my own, or how complicated it must be to bring baggage into a marriage. I tried my absolute best to let those comments slide off my back because I loved Mark, and he always assured me that his mother was just set in her ways, but meant no harm. He would tell me that once we were officially married, she would view us as a proper family unit, and I chose to believe him because I wanted so badly for Lily to have a big, loving, extended family. But as the wedding planning progressed, Alina's subtle exclusions became much harder to ignore, and they began to target Lily. When Mark's sister had a baby shower, Lily and I were invited, but during the family photo session, Alina loudly announced that they needed a shot of just the blood relatives and asked Lily to step out of the frame. I remember my stomach dropping as Lily stood alone by the gift table, clutching her little stuffed bear, watching the rest of the family smile for the camera. When I confronted Mark about it that night, he defended his mother, saying it was just a misunderstanding and that Alina just wanted a traditional photo for her old-fashioned photo album. He begged me not to make a big deal out of it and ruin the wedding piece, so against my better judgment, I swallowed my anger and kept quiet. I told myself that Alina was just old-fashioned, but deep down, a terrible gut feeling was starting to brew, telling me that my daughter was being treated like an outsider in the very family she was about to join. The real breaking point arrived last weekend, when Alina hosted her annual summer family reunion dinner at her massive suburban home, an event meant to celebrate the upcoming wedding and welcome me and Lily formally into the fold. Mark was so excited, telling me that this was the perfect opportunity for Lily to bond with all her future cousins, since his brothers and sisters were all bringing their children. Lily was ecstatic. She picked out her favorite sparkly pink dress, spent an hour doing her hair, and drew a beautiful picture of a giant house with all of us in it to give to Grandma Alina. When we arrived, the house was buzzing with energy, filled with aunts, uncles, and a half-dozen kids running around the backyard. Lily immediately tried to join in, running after the other children, but I noticed a strange, cold distance from the other parents. None of Mark's siblings really made an effort to introduce their kids to Lily, and Alina completely ignored the beautiful drawing Lily proudly handed her, tossing it onto a side table without a second glance. Things went from uncomfortable to outright cruel when dinner was finally served. Alina had set up a beautiful, massive dining table for the adults in the main dining room, and a separate, smaller kids' table in the adjacent sunroom, piled high with incredible food, special cupcakes, and personalized gift bags for the children. Lily was so excited to sit with the other kids, and as the adults began to sit down, I watched Lily walk over to the sunroom, find an empty chair, and proudly take a plate to serve herself some food. That was when Alina marched into the room, her face tight and rigid. In front of all the cousins, the aunts, the uncles, and the entire gathering, Alina reached down, firmly grabbed the plate out of Lily's hands, and set it back on the table. She looked down at my confused, sweet little girl and said in a loud, clear voice that carried across both rooms, "Put that back, sweetheart. This dinner is only for our real family's kids. You can go eat in the kitchen with the catering staff, or wait until the adults are finished." The entire house fell into a suffocating, horrified silence, and I felt the blood completely drain from my face as Lily's eyes welled up with tears, and her bottom lip began to tremble. So that is the exact situation I found myself in, standing in a room full of people who either agreed with this cruelty or were too cowardly to speak up, realizing that my daughter was being publicly humiliated by the woman who was supposed to become her grandmother. Before I tell you exactly how I reacted, what I said to Alina, and how this completely tore my relationship with Mark apart, I want you to pause right now and comment below. What would you have done in my shoes? Would you have stayed to keep the peace? Or would you have done what I did next? I didn't even hesitate for a single second. I walked into that sunroom, my heart pounding like a bass drum, and knelt down next to Lily, wrapping my arms around her shaking shoulders while she started to sob into my neck. I picked her up, held her tight, and turned around to face Alina, who was standing there with a smug, defiant look on her face, completely unapologetic. I looked at Mark, expecting him to be on his feet, defending his future stepdaughter, but instead, he was sitting in his chair, looking down at his lap, looking embarrassed but completely silent. That silence hurt worse than Alina's words. I looked Alina dead in the eye and said, "You are a cruel, miserable woman, and neither I nor my daughter will ever spend another second in your presence." Alina gasped, her face turning bright red, and she immediately tried to play the victim, stammering about how I was being dramatic and how she just didn't want the guest children ruining the special family dinner she had paid for. Mark finally stood up, rushing over to me, grabbing my arm and whispering desperately, "Please, just calm down. Let's go outside and talk about this. Don't ruin the party in front of my whole family." I shook his hand off my arm so hard he stumbled back. I looked at him with pure disgust and said, "Your mother just publicly humiliated a 7-year-old child, your future daughter, and your first instinct is to protect a party. We are done." I carried Lily out of that house while she wept, leaving behind a room full of shocked murmurs and Alina shouting that I was ungrateful and white trash. The drive home was the longest, most painful 30 minutes of my life, spent comforting my crying daughter who kept asking me what she did wrong and why Grandma Alina hated her. It broke my heart into a million pieces to explain to her that she did absolutely nothing wrong, that she is perfect, and that some people just have darkness in their hearts. When we got home and I finally got Lily calmed down and tucked into bed, my phone began to absolutely explode with text messages and phone calls from Mark and his family. Mark's siblings were texting me, calling me crazy, saying I overreacted, blew a minor misunderstanding out of proportion, and publicly embarrassed Mark and his mother. Mark sent me dozens of paragraphs, alternating between begging for forgiveness and blaming me for ruining our relationship over a petty argument, claiming his mother just has a strict definition of family and that we could have worked through it after the wedding. But seeing his lack of a backbone, seeing how effortlessly he chose his abusive mother over a helpless child who trusted him, completely cured me of any love I had left for him. The next morning, I packed up every single one of Mark's belongings that were at my apartment, boxed them up, and left them on the porch for his brother to pick up. I block-called Mark, told him the wedding was officially canceled, and that he could contact my lawyer if he wanted to discuss the deposits we had already put down on the venue. He tried to cry, tried to say he loved Lily, but I told him that a real man protects his family, and he failed the very first test. It has been a few days now, and while the emotional fallout has been incredibly heavy, and the wedding planning stress has turned into grief, looking at Lily's smile returning makes me know I made the right choice. No wedding, no man, and no amount of societal pressure is ever worth sacrificing my daughter's self-worth and happiness for. Ultimately, this nightmare taught me a massive lesson about boundaries and what it truly means to be a protector. I realized that people will show you exactly who they are, and if you ignore the red flags early on, you end up paying for it with your own peace and the emotional safety of the people you love most. I am sharing this story because I know there are so many single parents out there trying to blend families, and I want to remind you to always trust your gut and never let anyone make your children feel like second-class citizens. If you think I did the right thing by walking away from that toxic family and protecting my little girl, please hit the like button on this video to show your support. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more dramatic, real-life Reddit stories, and please share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section below. I love reading your advice and perspectives. Thank you all for listening to my story, and I'll see you all in the next one.